This ring stands as the ultimate symbol of honor for a British queen consort. Yet its story didn't begin with love or celebration, but with the chilling words of a desperate prince describing his future bride. "This poor, innocent creature is simply doomed to be my wife." Today, this very ring, born of political cynicism, awaits its moment, destined one day to grace the hand of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. How did a piece of jewelry for a doomed princess transform into a sacred dynastic relic? And what secret does its enormous ruby hold? To understand, we must peel back the layers of legend, separating fact from fiction, as we trace the fate of a ring that has witnessed not only coronations, but also quiet human tragedies. The early 19th century dawned with the British Empire at the zenith of its power. However, at its very heart, within Windsor Castle, a dynastic crisis brewed, threatening to destabilize the foundations of the throne. King George III was consumed by the depths of madness, while his eldest son, the Prince Regent and future George IV, led a scandalous life, despised his lawful wife, and had no heir. His only daughter had tragically died in childbirth. The throne hung precariously, and all hope rested on the king's younger, aging sons. It was then, in a desperate bid to save the dynasty, that Parliament took an unprecedented step. A sort of royal race was declared. A hefty annuity was promised to whichever prince first entered into a lawful marriage and produced an heir. This pragmatic deal transformed the search for a bride into a matter of national urgency. Among those who threw their hats into the ring was the king's third son, 52-year-old William, Duke of Clarence. A man known for his turbulent life and 10 illegitimate children, he decided to sacrifice sentiment for duty and, crucially, money. His choice fell upon 26-year-old Adelaide of Saxe-Meiningen, a princess from a tiny, impoverished German duchy. This was a marriage of convenience, a political alliance utterly devoid of romance. William hadn't even seen his bride before their engagement, but was certain that her penniless family wouldn't dare refuse an English prince. It was for this young woman, thrust by fate into the heart of British dynastic intrigues, that the ring, destined to make history, was brought into being. While the exact creation date of the jewel isn't precisely documented, its most probable occasion was the coronation of William and Adelaide in 1831. William had ascended to the throne after the deaths of his elder, childless brothers, and his consort, yesterday's impecunious princess, was becoming queen consort of the world's greatest empire. She required a symbol befitting her new status. The ring was intended to be her personal coronation regalia, a mark of her unbreakable connection to the monarchy and the British people. The creation of such a significant piece of jewelry could only be entrusted to the finest artisans. In that era, the principal jewelers to the British court were the masters of the House of Rundell, Bridge and Rundell. They were the very same craftsmen who had fashioned the regalia for George IV's controversial coronation and who set the standard in high jewelry art. Their style embodied the grandeur of the Georgian age: substantial gold, large, vibrant gemstones, and classical symmetrical forms. Most likely, it was within their workshops, to the rhythmic tapping of hammers and the flickering glow of gaslights, that this future masterpiece took shape. The concept was both simple and magnificent. This wasn't merely meant to be an ornament, but a state artifact, a ring reflecting not fleeting fashion, but the eternal essence of monarchy. It was intended less for Adelaide herself and more for all future queens consort who would follow her. Therefore, its design left no room for personal whims. Every element, from the choice of stones to the form of the setting, was dictated by the idea of power, continuity, and the unwavering stability of the British crown. Its destiny was sealed even before the first hammer blow touched the gold. It was destined for immortality. Let's momentarily set aside its history and examine the ring itself as a jeweler would under a magnifying glass, scrutinizing every detail. At its core lies a substantial band of pure yellow gold, the metal of kings. Its weight is palpable. This is no frivolous bauble, but a weighty symbol of authority that constantly reminds its wearer of the gravitas of the crown she shares with her spouse. The gold here isn't just a setting. It's the very foundation upon which the entire composition rests, a symbol of the enduring and timeless nature of the British monarchy. At the heart of the ring blazes an enormous ruby of a deep, saturated hue, a shade jewelers call pigeon's blood. This isn't just a stone, it's a droplet of frozen history, a symbol of passion, courage, and royal lineage. Cut in a broad octagonal shape, it doesn't catch the light in a myriad of tiny flashes like modern diamonds, but instead emits a steady, profound, and self-assured glow. In the 19th century, finding such a large and pristine ruby was a colossal undertaking. Its value was equivalent to the fortune of an entire aristocratic family. Encircling the central ruby, like ladies-in-waiting around their queen, is a dazzling procession of 14 substantial, old-cut diamonds. This isn't the contemporary brilliant cut, designed for maximum sparkle. This is the so-called old mine cut, which lends the stones a particular depth. In the candlelight that illuminated all ceremonies of that era, these diamonds didn't blind. They shimmered with a soft, living fire, creating an almost mystical halo around the ruby. Each of these stones was hand-selected to form a perfectly harmonious frame for the principal treasure. But the ring's most significant secret is hidden from a casual glance, revealed only upon closer inspection. Inlaid upon the large ruby are 5 smaller, square-cut rubies, forming a perfect cross. This is no random pattern. It is the cross of St. George, patron saint of England, the paramount symbol of the English flag. This element elevates the ring from a mere ornament to a sacred artifact. By wearing it, the Queen Consort doesn't simply adorn herself, she symbolically embraces the patronage and protection of the entire nation. The entire construction is a masterpiece of Georgian jewelry artistry. There is no excessive filigree or frivolity here, qualities often seen in later eras. The ring is monumental, symmetrical, and executed with impeccable precision. Each prong setting, holding a diamond, was handcrafted and built to last for centuries. It exudes not only luxury, but also imperial power, a confident assurance in itself and its rightful place. If one were to describe it in a single word, that word would be unassailable. Queen Adelaide's ring doesn't try to please, it commands respect. Its design is a declaration that the woman wearing it is not merely the king's spouse, but an integral component of the state mechanism, a symbol of stability and the continuity of power. It is the jeweler's embodiment of the idea of service to country, frozen in gold and precious stones. On September 8, 1831, Westminster Abbey filled with whispers and restrained surprise. The coronation of William IV and Queen Adelaide was unlike any other. The new king, a former sailor, disdained lavish ceremonies and considered them a waste of money. He agreed to the rite only under parliamentary pressure, and as a result, the celebration lacked the traditional banquet, procession, and many other centuries-old rituals, earning it the popular moniker of the penny coronation. An air of awkwardness hung in the air, as if a great empire was embarrassed by its own grandeur. And against this backdrop of almost deliberate simplification, against the eccentric monarch-playing king, Queen Adelaide's figure radiated unshakable dignity. She, who her fiancé once pitied as a doomed creature, was on this day the embodiment of the very idea of monarchy. Her every step, every gaze, was imbued with an awareness of the historical weight of the moment. She wasn't playing a role, she was embracing her destiny. The climax arrived the moment the Archbishop of Canterbury, uttering ancient prayers, took her coronation ring into his hands. In the dim light filtering through the Abbey's Gothic stained glass windows, the massive ruby ignited like a living heart. When the cold metal touched her finger, it was more than just a ritual. It was an act of consecration. In that instant, the ring ceased to be merely a jewel and transformed into a sacred symbol. By wearing it, Adelaide didn't simply become a crowned dignitary. She entered into a silent covenant with the country. The cross of St. George, laid out in rubies on the surface of the main stone, became the seal on this agreement. The weight of the gold on her hand became a perpetual reminder of duty and service. The ornament, born of political calculation, on that day acquired a soul and a lofty purpose. The reaction from her contemporaries was unanimous. If the king's behavior sparked gossip, the queen's noble earnestness captivated everyone. Newspapers and aristocratic diaries filled with admiring accounts of her grace, and the ring, sparkling on her hand, became the paramount visual symbol of that day. It didn't merely complete her image, it forged it. This very first public appearance transformed the jewel into a legend, irrevocably linking it to the image of an ideal queen consort, loyal, devout, and utterly dedicated to her duty. It was her quiet triumph. The golden age of this ring is inextricably linked to its first owner, Queen Adelaide. She wasn't a style icon in the modern sense, didn't chase after fashion or shock the public. Her iconic status was of a different kind. She became a symbol of dignity, piety, and duty in an era when the royal court was mired in scandals and extravagance. And the ring, massive, austere, and majestic, became a perfect reflection of her character. It didn't scream wealth, it spoke volumes about status. Although the ring was a coronation piece, Adelaide didn't simply tuck it away forever in a jewelry box. Official portraits still exist, showing the Queen posing with this iconic jewel on her finger. For her, it wasn't just an ornament, but a part of her official identity. Whenever she wore it for important state receptions or meetings with ambassadors, she wordlessly reminded everyone of her sacred vow made in Westminster Abbey. The ring became her calling card, a sign of her unbreakable bond with the crown and the country. Behind the Queen's public image lay a profound personal tragedy. Adelaide adored children, but fate was cruel to her. Several unsuccessful pregnancies and the deaths of her daughters in infancy left her childless. She tenderly cared for her husband's 10 illegitimate children and doted on her niece, the future Queen Victoria, yet the pain of her own loss never abated. One can only surmise whether this ring became a kind of talisman for her, a symbol of a different kind of motherhood, a motherhood for an entire nation, which she served with unwavering devotion. Her conservative views became part of history. Adelaide tolerated no frivolity, either in manners or dress, and her court was known for its strictness. Ladies in overly revealing gowns or with questionable reputations were simply not admitted. And the ring, with its classic design and the religious symbolism of the cross of St. George, perfectly matched this image of a moralistic queen. It was just like her, serious, traditional, and uncompromising. But Adelaide's most significant contribution to the ring's history was made not during her lifetime, but after it. She didn't view it as her personal property to be bequeathed to anyone she chose. She saw it as a state artifact. It was thanks to her will and the tradition that thus emerged that the ring was not sold or dismantled, but preserved in the treasury as part of the coronation regalia. She became not merely its first owner, but its guardian and the founder of a magnificent tradition. This pivotal moment ushered in the golden age of the ornament, rendering it timeless. After Adelaide, it graced the fingers of Queen Alexandra, consort to Edward VII, then Mary of Teck, wife of George V, and of course Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, consort to George VI. Each of these remarkable women, by touching the ring, reached back through history, becoming another link in the chain first forged by that fated princess from a small German duchy. Thus, Adelaide's ring became an undying symbol for all British queens consort. At first glance, the story of this ring appears flawless. It bears no stain of bloody curses, notorious thefts, or fateful love triangles. Its journey seems straightforward and noble. Yet the shadow it casts is not one of crime, but rather the subtle pall of quiet human drama and cold political calculation, forces that can, at times, prove far more chilling. The ring's most profound scandal lies in the very circumstances of its creation. It was not a beacon of ardent love or a joyous union. Instead, it became a gilded contract, the definitive endpoint in a cynical bargain orchestrated by Parliament. Prince William married Adelaide not from a deep well of affection, but for the sake of an allowance and the pressing need to produce an heir. The ring's very existence stands as a poignant monument to an era when a princess's feelings and a woman's destiny were mere pawns in a grand dynastic game. Another, far deeper shadow fell upon the ring after the coronation. It was meant to symbolize fertility and the continuation of the royal line. But fate, it seems, had other plans. The ring became a silent witness to Queen Adelaide's greatest tragedy, her childlessness. It bore witness to her tears after each failed pregnancy, her despair, her quiet anguish. It glittered on her hand as she tenderly embraced the children of others, her husband's illegitimate offspring and her niece Victoria, all the while knowing she would never have her own. Thus, a symbol of dynastic hope morphed into a poignant emblem of its first wearer's private sorrow. There are also whispers of a different nature, circulating among gemologists and historians of jewelry. This is not a scandal, but a professional enigma. The truth is, in the 19th century, the art of gemstone diagnostics was far from perfect. Many legendary historical rubies, including the famed Black Prince's ruby in the British Crown jewels, were in reality noble spinels, stones no less beautiful, yet distinctly different. Officially, the stone in Adelaide's ring is referred to as a ruby, but might it not hold this very gemological secret within its depths? This remains a beautiful yet unproven legend, lending an additional aura of mystery to the piece. Thus, the ring's darker side is defined not by scandalous crimes, but by quiet dramas. It is a tale of a marriage of convenience, of hopes unfulfilled, and of silent devotion to duty despite personal sorrow. The facts here are the cynical political undercurrents and the Queen's tragic childlessness. And the myths are merely the soft inquiries of experts regarding the true nature of its fiery heart. The end of an era arrived quietly, devoid of palace coups or dramatic scenes. On June 20th, in the year 1837, King William IV passed away. He had kept his word, living until his niece Victoria reached her 18th birthday, and thereby sparing her from the regency of her formidable mother. With the king's final breath, everything shifted for Adelaide. In a single instant, she ceased to be the reigning queen consort and became the Queen Dowager. And the ring on her hand, a potent symbol of her status, instantaneously transformed into a relic of a bygone era. The atmosphere of this farewell was imbued not with the sorrow of lost power, but with a profound sense of duty fulfilled. Adelaide did not cling to her privileges. One of her very first acts was a letter to the young Victoria, in which she was the first to address her as Your Majesty, thereby acknowledging the new sovereign. This gesture truly showcased her intrinsic greatness. She approached her coronation ring with the same gracious understanding. She understood. It no longer belonged to her personally. It belonged to the crown. The ring's farewell was both inevitable and symbolic. It was not sold at auction, nor was it passed down as a personal heirloom. Instead, it was ceremoniously placed within the Tower of London's Jewel House to take its rightful place among the other coronation regalia. This act marked the definitive closure of Adelaide's chapter in the ornament's rich history. The ring retreated into the shadows, into the quiet solemnity and dim light of the royal vault. A period of quiet repose began for the ring. It rested on a velvet cushion, far from the glitter of balls and the gaze of courtiers. But this was no mere oblivion. On the contrary, in this silence, its value only deepened. It ceased to be merely an accessory and transformed into a historical artifact, gathering layers of legend. It awaited its moment, the next queen consort, to return to the stage and continue its mission, a purpose instilled by Adelaide herself to serve as an eternal symbol of service and succession. For decades, the ring lay in the velvet hush of the treasury. An entire epoch passed. The Industrial Revolution roared to its close, the British Empire reached its zenith, and the long, almost mythical age of Queen Victoria drew to an end. As a reigning monarch, she was crowned with a different jewel, the sapphire sovereign's ring. Adelaide's ring patiently bided its time, and that moment arrived at the dawn of a new 20th century. Its triumphant return came on August 9th, 1902, the day of the coronation of King Edward VII and his wife, Queen Alexandra. After years of Victorian mourning, the nation yearned for sparkle, opulence, and splendor. And this coronation became the apotheosis of Edwardian glamour. Once again, Westminster Abbey was filled with light and color, and at the heart of this magnificence was it, the ring of the first Queen Consort. When the Archbishop of Canterbury placed the ring on Queen Alexandra's finger, something more profound than a mere repetition of ritual occurred. It was an act of tradition resurrected. In 1831, the ring had been a novelty, a personal symbol for one specific woman. Now, 70 years later, it returned to the scene as a historical relic, a bridge cast across time. Alexandra was not simply receiving a piece of jewelry, she was accepting the torch from Adelaide, becoming part of a grander narrative. The perception of the ring had fundamentally changed. If for Adelaide it symbolized the attainment of status, for Alexandra, who had been the nation's beloved Princess of Wales for decades, it represented the culmination of her long journey. This was no longer just Adelaide's ring. It had become the Queen Consort's coronation ring. Its value was now measured not only in carats of ruby and diamonds, but also in the unseen presence of its first wearer, in the decades of waiting, in the very idea of unbroken continuity. It was on this day that its historical value definitively outweighed its purely gemological worth. It became priceless. After Alexandra, it would grace the finger of Mary of Teck, then Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, the future Queen Mother. Each new coronation would add another chapter to its story, another layer of meaning. But it was on that August day in 1902 that the ring achieved its immortality, transforming from a personal item of one queen into an eternal attribute of all future queens consort of Great Britain. Its second birth marked its ultimate triumph. Today, should you find yourself in London and venture through the ancient, somber walls of the Tower, you will discover its dwelling place. In the Jewel House treasury, in subdued light, behind bulletproof glass, on a cushion of regal purple velvet, rests Queen Adelaide's ring. It lies alongside crowns, scepters, and orbs, an integral part of the world's greatest collection of monarchical regalia. Its current status is no longer that of an accessory, but a historical artifact of national significance. Its official name, the Queen Consort's coronation ring. This signifies that it no longer belongs to an individual. It belongs to the very idea of monarchy, to the institution of the crown itself. For most of its life, it serves as a museum exhibit viewed by millions of tourists. And only once in a generation, during the sacred moment of coronation, does it awaken from its slumber to fulfill its grand destiny. To attempt to gauge its worth in pounds or dollars is a futile, even vulgar, endeavor. It is beyond price. Its value is not derived from the weight of its gold or the clarity of its stones. Its true worth lies in its impeccable provenance, its unbroken history. Etched forever into its metal and facets are the destinies of Adelaide, Alexandra, Mary, Elizabeth, and most recently, Camilla. Every queen who has worn it has added an invisible yet most crucial layer to its value, a layer of profound historical significance. Even if, hypothetically, every stone were extracted and the gold melted down, the resulting sum would be negligible compared to its intangible worth. This is no mere ring. It is a time capsule, a physical testament to the continuity of power and female service to the British Crown for nearly 2 centuries. It is a keeper of eternity, silently awaiting the next grand act in its long history, the day it might adorn the hand of Queen Catherine. We began our story with cold, almost harsh words about a poor, fated creature. We posed the question, how could a ring, born of cynical political calculation, transform into one of the most sacred relics of the British dynasty? Now, having traced its entire journey, we can offer a definitive answer. The transformation was made possible not by the magic of stones or the glint of gold, but by the alchemy of the human spirit. The answer lies in the quiet dignity of its first wearer. Queen Adelaide embraced her challenging destiny and imbued it with meaning and grace. She did not allow the personal tragedy of childlessness to break her. Instead, she transmuted her unspent love into service to the nation. It was her decision to pass the ring not as a personal item, but as an endowment of the crown that transformed it from a symbol of a marriage of convenience into an eternal emblem of service by vocation. She, through her very life, consecrated this object, breathing a soul into it. This is precisely why Queen Adelaide's ring is far more than just a piece of jewelry. It is a physical embodiment of human passions, ambitions, and grand narratives. Frozen within its substantial gold is the cold calculation of parliamentarians desperate for an heir. In the deep, blood-red glow of its central ruby rests the quiet sorrow of a woman who never became a mother. In the shimmer of its diamonds lie the solemn vows and hopes of an entire empire, echoed from generation to generation. Today it bides its time in the tower's treasury. It awaits not just a new owner, but a new guardian of tradition. Someday, on the day of a future coronation, it will rest upon the finger of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. And in that moment, more than just a piece of jewelry will be passed on. An invisible legacy will be transferred, a legacy of duty, resilience and service, first begun by that fated princess, Adelaide. The ring proves a simple yet profound truth. The genuine value of an object is determined not by its carats, but by the stories it holds within. It has outlived its creators, its owners, and entire eras, because it has absorbed the most precious thing in the world, fragments of human destinies. In this lies its immortality. For true masterpieces do not merely reflect light, they radiate history.